I'm Dr. Brett Osborn, board-certified neurosurgeon, nutrition specialist, and featured BPI sports expert.
So let's talk about the right kind of carbs and the wrong kind of carbs.
Here, we're aggressive. So I'm talking here in my clinic. We're aggressive. A low glycemic index carbohydrate, okay, just like, has criteria to it, just like a traditional ketogenic diet. 5% of your daily calories are from fats. Well, low glycemic index carbohydrates are classically defined as those with a glycemic index of 55. In my clinic, we're more aggressive. My cutoff is 40. My high end is 40.
So give me an example of ones that fall into that category.
Right. So those would be things like most vegetables, okay, green leafy vegetables. I don't want you having things like peas and carrots because those are sort of on the higher end there.
Still a lot of sugar there.
Yeah, corn, we get rid of that. But pretty much I tell my patients, look, I want you getting all of your, distilled down, I want you getting all of your carbohydrates ultimately, and we transition them from 30 to 40 over 2 weeks, 20 to 30 over 2 weeks, and then 0 to 20. Why? Because if I shut the door on somebody and I take their line of cocaine out of the refrigerator like that, my phone's going to be ringing off the hook because people are dependent upon the high glycemic index carbohydrates.
So you're transitioning them.
We transition them slowly down. I want people 0 to 20. And those are green leafy vegetables, things like onions, tomatoes, what else is on the list? Scallion, celery.
So ideally, you would like in a modified ketogenic diet, so let's say instead of the 25 grams of carbs in a day on a traditional, you're broadening that to, let's say, 40 grams within the day. You would ideally like to see all 40 grams.
No, 40 glycemic index is the high.
No, but I thought even on total carbohydrates for a day.
Somewhere between 50 and 100, depending upon how
50 and 100.
How big an individual is. And that's a good start.
So out of that 50 to 100 throughout the day, you would ideally like to see them all fall below 40
and ideally,
on the glycemic index.
And ideally even less than 20. Ultimately, after we transition them over a period of 5 weeks. Yes. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to have to eat a lot on this diet, you're damn right.
Right.
I want you eating, despite the fact that the body is saying, I'm sort of in a pseudo-starved state. You push onward, and you have to sort of force yourself to get those carbohydrates in.
So a lot of fibrous carbs, a lot of leafy greens.
Yep.
Let's talk about the type of foods that people should eat. And in that, let's also have a conversation, where do carbohydrates play a role in that, and what type of carbohydrates? So in a traditional ketogenic diet where we're talking about 5% of our calories are coming from carbohydrates, roughly 25 grams or less of carbohydrates. Sure. So let's talk about the rest. We talked about briefly the types of good fats versus bad fats, but let's talk about that. Let's actually spell it out. Like, what are the bad sources of fats and what are some of those good sources of fat?
Okay, so again, we're talking about sources of fat, meaning inflammatory fats versus anti-inflammatory fats.
So break that down.
Okay.
Inflammatory fats.
Right. So we're talking about the omega-6s, right, versus the omega-3s, really. All right.
And what does that mean to the average person?
Right. So typically in America, we are consuming at a ratio of 20 to 1 omega-6s versus omega-3s. So what does that mean? You're eating lots and lots of red meats, Krispy Kreme donuts. You're eating lots and lots of potato chips. You're eating French fries. These have dangerous levels of omega-6 fats in them. So, and not that you can eat potato chips on an Atkins diet, because you can't, because they're carbohydrates. I'm just saying the types of fats that are used in the production of these things are inflammatory. Right? But you can certainly eat red meat, right? There's no question you can eat red meat. You don't want to have red meat as your source of fats day in and day out. Do you want to have bacon as your source of fats day in and day out? No, you don't. Okay. You want to have things like the good stuff. Okay, so the omega-3s and the omega-9s, right? So the olive oil, the omega-3s from fish, the coconut oils, nuts, so almonds, walnuts, avocados. Those are the good fats versus the bad fats, which is what I was just talking about.
So let's talk about a popular trend started in ketogenic diets, and that's bulletproof coffee. Now, I believe there's a brand out there, so I'm not talking about the brand. I'm talking about the concept, which was this idea of taking a stick of butter,
right,
putting in your cup of coffee, which is disgusting, idea one, the fats would help curb your appetite,
Right.
give you a sense of fullness.
Which they do.
The caffeine obviously would curb your appetite. And a lot of the people that I heard were doing this first thing in the morning, hence the coffee, curbing their appetite all the way until whatever, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're not eating anything during that period of time. But also, again, the butter being a source of fat. So let's talk about that, because I think that falls back in line, the difference between good fat versus bad fat. I think there's a lot of things out there that are trending. And so people are saying, okay, well, hey, it's okay. It's okay to eat a stick of butter. I don't think it's ever okay to eat a stick of butter.
Right.
So let's talk about that for a second.
It just goes back to the same thing. I don't have problems with people eating small amounts of these things. I really don't. One of the beneficial fats for the gut is something that I take. It's called butyric acid, which is one of the fats that's in butter. So I don't have any problem with people eating small amounts of these. But it's all about, like everything else, you can have these in moderation. And if you're going to eat these so-called bad fats, I'll make sure that if I'm going to have some red meat, I stuff 3 or 4 omega-3s, these medical grade omega-3s that we use here in the office in my mouth, because it's not so much about the absolute amount of the bad fat that you eat.
It's the ratio.
That's it. It's the ratio. So the ideal ratio, we eat 20 to 1 here, Americans, 20 to 1, omega-6 and inflammatory fats to anti-inflammatory fats. That's terrible. Probably should be down at 1 to 1. It's hard, though. It's very, very hard. Do you need omega-6s? Maybe the other question. Well, wait a minute. Why don't we just get rid of all the omega-6s? Well, my answer to that question would be, are you going to recover from your workouts absent omega-6s? And the answer is no, because you do need some inflammatory mediators in the body to allow you to recover from your workout. That's an inflammatory process, and also to fight disease.
Well, that's
right?
even when you buy a supplement. It's not just a 3 and 9; it's a 3, 6, 9.
Correct.
And I would also say that with the Japanese, it's not just that they're eating less of the inflammatory fats and more of the others. It's the ratio. It's so eating less of those, but also eating foods higher in 3s and 9s, meaning fish, etc.
100%.
So it's also what they're eating.
100%.
So in a keto, and we'll generalize, just say any kind of keto diet, we want to try to minimize the animal fats. Let's, again, generalizing a lot of the animal sources of fats, correct? Mm-hmm. We want to bring in good sources such as olive oil or nuts, different sorts of grains, anything that are high in 3s and 9s. So that's the fat aspect of it. So we want to, it's not just consume a diet high in fat, make sure we get good fats in there. So let's talk about the other aspect where there's a lot of confusion, especially for people working out. So that's kind of my world, is dealing with people that are fitness enthusiasts. They train 5 days a week. Most of them, even if they're not trying to build muscle, they're at least trying to maintain lean muscle. And people have been conditioned for years and years and years. Protein. And I do think protein is an important part of the diet, but not like it's been prioritized in years past. So let's talk about how protein plays a part in a ketogenic diet, because I've tried ketogenic diets before, and I've tried to modify them where I was bringing in, I'm used to taking a lot of amino acids. So I take a lot of BCAAs, I take a lot of essential amino acids. And there's no way to be in ketosis when you're taking that much aminos through glucogenesis. Your body is converting that to glucose nonstop.
Nope.
So whether it's a modified keto diet or a traditional keto diet, let's talk about protein. Because I know that maintaining or even building lean muscle is important. Again, we talked about that. It's our metabolic engine. So I know that's a priority for you with your clients. So what is your recommendation on protein intake? I guess here's a better question. No matter who you are, whether you're in keto or not, how much protein do you really need to build or maintain lean muscle?
Right. Well, nobody knows the answer to that, as you know. I mean, that's been a hot topic of debate for many years. I will tell you that, again, recent literature suggests that it's overstated. And I will tell you that with my own body, I don't believe that I need nearly as much as I used to. I just don't. That said, what we do, so if you are going to follow the dipstick for whatever that's worth, traditional ketogenic diet, you're going to get knocked out of ketosis real quick. Right. So if you are like you saw, if you go, if your ratios are again 70% calories from fat, 5%, and then maybe about 25%, or maybe even 75%, 5%, and then the other 20% from protein. If you start pushing that up, you will get knocked out of ketosis. It's going to be different for everybody. The only way to know, again, if you want to use the ridiculous dipstick as your barometer of how well you're doing, even though we know that that means very little, provided you're not way, way, way out of ketosis. Okay. You have to use your dipstick and figure out where that line is for you.